And now it's time for news from around the world. This is Meanwhile In. Meanwhile, around the world, Coca-Cola deserves some recognition for winning an award 2 years running. Coca-Cola was found for the second year in a row to be the most polluting brand in a global audit of plastic trash conducted by the Break Free from Plastic global movement. The giant soda company was responsible for more plastic litter than the next top 3 polluters combined, which is difficult. So kudos. Let's bring up a graphic and you're gonna see the comparison of the 3. And Coca-Cola, huge there. And you won't be surprised with some of the other names. As always, PepsiCo just lagging behind Coca-Cola in taste and litter this time. This is basically done by, they get tens of thousands of volunteers to comb mostly beaches, I think other areas as well, and pick up plastic trash. They identified bits of plastic from 8,000 different brands, but some of them definitely stood out. And Coca-Cola, which loves to say that it's being much more environmentally conscious and all of that, some of that might theoretically be true, also behind the scenes fighting against legislation to make that sort of littering less likely. Great job in getting the award twice in a row. Maybe do something about your littering. Pass that off the award to a different company next year. It would be nice to see some switch up in there. Meanwhile, in Brazil, although many people have moved on from the fires in the Amazon, the threat to the Amazon somehow continues. Soaring deforestation coupled with the destructive policies of Jair Bolsonaro could push the Amazon rainforest dangerously to an irreversible tipping point within 2 years, a prominent economist has said. After this point, the rainforest would stop producing enough rain to sustain itself and would start slowly degrading into a drier savanna, releasing billions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere. And so some people think that it might be 15 years, it might be 20 years before that happens, but new scientific analysis implies that it could just be a couple of years away. And to give you an idea of how this is being achieved, Brazil's Space Research Institute reported that deforestation in August was 222% higher than in August of last year. That is amazing. It is amazing what you can accomplish when you are elected on a platform of destroying the Amazon, wiping out indigenous tribes that might exist in there, just to provide a little bit more land for grazing cattle and a little bit more lumber. Jair Bolsonaro has a difficult quest to kill the Amazon during his first term, but I think he's gotten off to a great start in that. Meanwhile, Chile is more than 2 weeks into massive protests, significant protests that have already left 18 people at the very least dead. More than 5,000 have been detained, hundreds have been injured already. Edwin actually provided for me a journalist who did a little summary of what these protests are about. Here's a section of that.
On Saturday, President Sebastián Piñera sent troops into the streets, and the military declared an 8 p.m. curfew in Santiago. That night, social media users uploaded videos of police and soldiers shooting at civilians. They're trying to stop a movement that started with high school students protesting a subway fare increase. For 5 days, students in Santiago stormed subway stations. Chilean police responded with violence. Someone who earns the minimum wage and takes 1 round trip on the subway per day spends approximately 17% of their income on subway fares.
We left that section on the end of the video there to give you an idea that the fare increase actually is very significant for an already overpriced system. That is Christian Rossel, by the way, who has a 2-part series explaining not just what's going on right now in the protest, but puts it in historical context of past governments of Chile and also the US's involvement in that as well. So head to Christian Rossel's Twitter account. You can find those 2 videos embedded there for a lot more information and a lot more understanding of the region than I could possibly provide. But I did want to talk a little bit more about this because social media is awash with videos of people peacefully protesting and also people being brutalized by the police. Edwin shared with me a video of a guy being shot in the leg. It looked like possibly with something non-lethal, but it's hard to say exactly because he was beset by police and started being beaten right after that. There's videos, it might have been a part in there, of cops running through the streets firing shotguns at people. They're firing lethal rounds at protesters. So when I say that hundreds have been injured, 18 have been killed, this isn't some like mystery, like how did it come to this? How did this happen? almost immediately after the protests began, the violence from the regime started to be directed at those protesters. And in part due to that, actually, what initially began as a generally student-led protest over the fare increase has widened to a number of different concerns, all effectively being generated by the insane out-of-control levels of wealth and income inequality in Chile. It's, as Andy was saying earlier in the show, it's the same sort of story we've effectively seen in a number of different cities around the globe. People are fed up, they're not gonna take it any longer. And it's unfortunate that at the same time that they're rising up, you can see it in London, in Lebanon, in Hong Kong, in all of these cities, governments are showing an increased willingness to employ force, including lethal force against these protesters, even if they are 100% peaceful. Now, just today, actually, the president announced an increase in wages, social payments, subsidies on energy and medicine, and apologized for a lack of vision in tackling pent-up frustration in Chile. But almost immediately, both economists looking at the amount of money that was being provided by these changes and many of the protesters have responded by saying this is not nearly enough to take out the concerns that people have in these different areas. It's almost like a token payment, and some people are responding with even more rage that their justified passion is attempting to be co-opted with effectively breadcrumbs when they're asking for much more fundamental changes. So, as we've said for the protesters in Hong Kong, we say to the protesters in Chile, you're showing incredible bravery in fighting for much needed change, but stay safe at the same time, because there are certainly people literally gunning for you in this case. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.